Colin, it's great to see you as we're in the first full week of August, and certainly a lot to talk about with the Alabama Crimson Tide. How's everything been going for you as you've gathered info from Media Day and all the practices, all the availability we've had over the last few days?
It's been a whirlwind, man. Plenty of conversations, plenty of talking with Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb, Kane Womack over these past few days, players, and we're just kind of trying to glean all the information that we can out of these, practice sessions that we get, and just trying to see what this team looks like.
As we said this week, again, first week of August, just how would you describe the overall mood around this football team as they enter in this portion of fall camp?
I think it's one of confidence. I think it's one of this is a team that there's a lot more conversation about the first year of DeBoer, actually more than I expected. One where they're saying the last year was unacceptable, and that everybody who we have on this roster wants to be here. They know the expectation of what Kalen DeBoer wants to build at Alabama. So I think it's one of confidence, it's one of comfort, and it's one of excitement. Kalen DeBoer and the players, they talk about how, with Ryan Grubb, even though he's new and Jason Jones is new on staff as well, it's one of, a level of comfort. It's one of, stability they talk about, and how a lot of the pieces, they knew one another from previous stops and they knew each other from last year. So it's almost kind of like the band coming back together for one run. Through that familiarity, through that confidence, I mean, there's high expectations stemming from that program for sure.
In the media availabilities to watch practice in person, kind of where have your eyes kind of taken you? What's been your focus on when you've been out there the last few days?
I think quarterbacks, man. I think that's been a lot of people's focus here the last few days, where it's seeing what Ty Simpson looks like, what Austin Mack, what Keelan Russell kind of look like. I mean, we haven't been able to see a lot, right? Just a lot of running backs work, a lot of tight ends, and maybe a little bit of wide receivers. But I mean, just to see when Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer talk about consistency on offense, when they talk about how they want a guy who's going to make, the safe play, the guy who may be as, I don't know, like have that level of bring that stability to the offense that may not be the most flashy. It may not be the most like downfield, exciting, rah-rah, but it's the one that's going to consistently move the ball downfield and get balls to receivers like Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, Isaiah Horton. Like that's what they're talking about is if you give those receivers a chance, they're going to make a play. That's just how talented they are. So I think that's been where my eyes are focused is, okay, which quarterback provides that best opportunity for Alabama? And I think, I mean, I can't speak for them, but I think Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer are trying to think the same thing at this point.
Any other checkpoints along the way in terms of the quarterback competition leading up to game week?
I think I think Ty Simpson, if you were to ask Ryan Grubb and you were to ask Kalen DeBoer, I think they didn't hide in spring that if he were to start a game for Alabama the day after the spring game, Ty Simpson was going to be the starter. And asking Ryan Grubb immediately after the first day of practice, he said Ty Simpson is still in that mode. He is still the guy if they were to start a game tomorrow. Now Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb are just looking for him to earn the job. Over the course of a slew of practices, scrimmage coming up Saturday, scrimmage coming up the next Saturday as well. So I think Ty Simpson is the favorite, and I don't think that's anything crazy to say. But, even just talking with Kalen DeBoer, I grabbed him, or I talked to him about Austin Mack for a couple minutes, and he told me he wants the competition of this whole thing too, because competition brings up guys like Austin Mack, like Keelan Russell, and makes them better and kind of improves, like gives them something to work for and to strive for. And through that, you can see the growth over the course of, the competition and the head to head. So I think, Ty Simpson is kind of the front runner and should be the front runner being, 4 years into his career at Alabama. But, that's not stopping Alabama from saying, no, this is a quarterback battle. We want to see what Austin Mack and Keelan Russell have got, even if it's just planning ahead for the future.
Speaking of Ty Simpson and going back to January, you had a great in-depth profile of Ty Simpson. What'd you really enjoy learning the most about him, especially with his upbringing around his dad, who was
Yeah.
around the game as well, continues to be the head coach of UT Martin?
Yeah, I think how much of a football guy Ty Simpson is. Well, my first favorite thing is how, when he was younger, his dad and his family grew up Ty Simpson grew up very, very close to the UT Martin campus. And his dad would let him, before he got his license, wake up at 5 in the morning and take the family van to campus without a license, just because the dad didn't want to get up that early. So just so that Ty Simpson can come in and work on his craft, and he's driven from an early age. He's always soaked in information and learned from his coaches, learned from his dad, been around quarterbacks at UT Martin that kind of, it's a different level, but it's kind of taught him, okay, this is what it takes to be a pro. This is what it takes to be a college athlete. And Ty Simpson kind of took that and ran with it, and continued that learning from Bryce Young, continued that learning from Jalen Milroe. And from there, it seems like, from the outside looking in, that Ty Simpson is kind of, all of that knowledge and all of that kind of leadership that he's soaked in has kind of started to spill out on the rest of this roster. And it's turned into, every receiver that I've talked to, every coach that I've talked to is talking about this confident, this Ty Simpson with swagger that Alabama fans should be expected to see this fall, because of all this stuff that's been soaking in. It's almost about to pour out in front of Alabama fans this fall. So I think that's the big thing, is him just soaking in all this information, becoming a 5-star, but a 5-star with something to prove as well. So I think just seeing his path, seeing how much football knowledge he has, which kind of makes, where he's at and kind of where he stands, makes sense.
Going to the other side of the ball, what have you enjoyed learning about this Crimson Tide defense? What stands out to you anytime you have seen them on the practice field?
Yeah, I think a lot of my focus has been on the defensive line and just pass rushers in general. Talking with LT Overton, Freddie Roach, there's been a lot of conversation about turning, potential or pressures into production, sacks, tackles for loss, because you didn't see a lot of that if you're an Alabama football fan, you didn't see a lot of those finishing moves from guys last year. And a lot of that is just, body control, technique, but it's also just effort and force on the line of scrimmage, because you saw LT Overton, be a step away, or Tim Keenan a step away from from quarterbacks all off season or all last season. And I talked to Freddie Roach about that at media day, and he was talking about how it's literally just, a step or two. It's footwork, it's speed, it's getting around the tackle, and just taking advantage of every opportunity that you have, right? So that's what I'm looking at it, because I think that's the difference in Alabama's defense in 2025 is you have a defense that's returning a stacked defensive backs room, one that's overflowing with talent, especially at corner. Going to continue that ball hawk mentality. What can change with Alabama if they have a defense that has consistent tackles for loss, that has consistent sacks, that are consistently in the backfield and forcing quarterbacks to throw much quicker than they want to? I think that heightens everything else on this defense. So defensive line and pass rushing in general, I'll bring the Wolf linebackers into it too. That's going to be the difference in what this defense can do in 2025.
Then really, either side of the ball or in special teams, any key position battles that really have to be determined before getting ready for Florida State, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think you mentioned special teams. I think that's the one that's going to be the main one that fans may not think about, but it's the one that could be the big one heading into fall, between Alex Esperuhoff, the freshman out of California, and Blake Dowd, Colorado School of Mines punter. From what I was told, Blake Dowd is in the lead at this point. But I mean, Alex Asparuhoff coming off of injury, they have high expectations for him heading into the fall and just throughout his career at Alabama. But I think that's Kalen DeBoer's been clear. Nobody's going to replace James Burnip. James Burnip was a man amongst boys in the punting profession, and it'll be interesting to see what that kind of difference looks like come game day. But how much, Alabama fans could be taking for granted what they had in James Burnip and the weapon that he was for Alabama. So seeing anybody else back in that backfield and will be interesting to see come fall just how much of a difference that is. But you also mentioned left guard, which is another position that is pretty big for Alabama, replacing a huge presence in Tyler Booker. looks like it's going to be Gino Vandermark. Cam Dewberry is also taking reps at left guard. Gino Vandermark, a little bit of an interesting situation just because of his versatility. They've been repping him at right guard. He's their backup center as well. So if Gino wins that left guard job officially, that doesn't mean he's not going to play center. That doesn't mean he's not going to play right guard if Jaden Roberts gets nicked up or Parker Brailsford. So this is it's interesting because even with this position battle, which every offensive lineman you talk to, whether it's Caden Proctor, whether it's Jaden Roberts, like these guys believe that Alabama has a Joe Moore award-winning offense, the best offensive line in the country, and that's what they strive to be. And that's the expectation from inside the building too. And that could be the difference, especially with a new quarterback behind center. That could be the difference between the offense that Alabama wants and the offense that Alabama is striving for.
So that's a good look at everything in the preseason camp for the Crimson Tide, getting ready for Alabama against Florida State. But for you, you've also kind of taken a deep dive into Alabama's recruiting efforts, especially here in the state of Alabama. An article published recently in Tuscaloosa News, TuscaloosaNews.com. What'd you learn in your reporting about how Kalen DeBoer has approached specifically in-state recruiting, maybe year one versus year two?
Yeah, I think it goes back to even when DeBoer first took the job, right? That time when he was, going around the country introducing himself as like officially as the heir to Nick Saban, and the hours that he spent at different high schools around the state, kind of introducing himself, getting to know the history, getting to know the players that have come from buildings. And he told me in another story that was published recently, he told me that he really didn't have a mindset going in on what it took to win the state of Alabama on the recruiting trail. That's not something that, Nick Saban left in like the desk drawer, right? It was something that he took personal experience, personal wins from his time at Washington, and the relationships he built out on the West Coast and applied them to Alabama. And you saw somebody who relationships took the forefront, getting to know the prospects, getting to know their families, getting to know their high school coaches, pitching Alabama in the same way Nick Saban did, that Alabama is still Alabama. It's a program that I was just talking to a coach today about. Alabama is even without Nick Saban, it's a program that still pushes out NFL type talent. It's still a program that if you are successful there, you can play anywhere in the NFL. You can be a first round pick. And that's not something that every program can say, no matter who's in charge. So I think Kalen DeBoer, it took I think it did take a little bit on the recruiting trail to kind of learn the state. He did have to focus on retention right when he got there, securing the likes of Jalen Mbakwe, securing the likes of Ryan Williams. So that's why that in-state class in 2025 may not look the shiniest, for lack of a better term, but talking to kids across the state in 2026, they are just very, very bought in to bringing Alabama, the Crimson Tide, back to that top spot on the recruiting trail in state. And it's not about, NIL is a part of it, right? NIL is always a part of it on the recruiting trail now, but it's this pride. EJ Crowell, the running back from Jackson, grew up an Alabama fan. He was recruited by Nick Saban, and he still buys into the fact that Alabama can be Alabama with somebody else in charge other than Nick Saban.
Really fascinating work. Again, I encourage all Alabama fans to check it out to learn a little more about the recruiting side, plus everything going on right now as we get ready for August 30th and Alabama against Florida State. Colin, thank you so much for the time you've given us here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. All the best as we get ready for kickoff, but thank you again for your time.
Thanks for having me, Roger.